And Charlie may have an additional point.
Actually, there's four questions or points to make. One is, the great thing about JDRF is that it's an international organization. So even though as Americans sometimes we may get frustrated by the regulatory system in this country, as a JDRF, we actually get to exploit the regulatory differences all over the world. And one of the implications of that is in the artificial pancreas program right now, we're doing trials over in Europe, and one of the reasons we're doing that is it's easier to get them done sooner and faster over there. So, we can look at that as a difficulty for us here, but we can also look at it as something that is an international organization we can exploit for the benefit of moving things forward faster. And the second thing, Tom, you said that we can't change the economics. At some level, that's true, but going back to the smart insulin example and Todd's ion and smart cells, one of the biggest impacts of having smart cells be so sold to Merck is that it sends a signal to all of the other entrepreneurs out there that this is something they can make money on. And that is a hugely important point to recognize, because that means a lot of other people are now going to say, gee, not just do I want to cure diabetes, we all want to cure diabetes. They want to make money. And this will tell them that there's a real opportunity here, so it really drives people there. So I think, in fact, we actually can change the incentives when we get these wins with things like smart.
And I think we just really need to appreciate that. I mean, so I will stand up on the soapbox for the U.S. I mean, we are a remarkably entrepreneurial country, and people, if they've got an idea, they will try to figure out ways to drive it forward, and this is a good thing. And people come from all over the world to be in the United States because of this. And I got to tell you, I travel all over the country, all over the world for JDRF, and it's amazing how much stuff is going on in this country because of this environment that we can have and drive some of these things forward. So,
I have a question. How many people have type 1 diabetes in the United States?
Nobody knows because we don't have a global, comprehensive registry for the country, but it's one of the U.S.'s bugaboos, frankly. But between 2 and 3 million is what we estimate.
Okay, and how many people is projected to have type 2 diabetes?
Type 2 diabetes is about 25 million.
I've heard as high as 50 million.
Well, that's a
And again, I don't want to make preachy or an editorial comment, but you told me about how you were able to entice Merck to invest $300 million in smart insulin because of the market potential for 25 million people who have type 2 diabetes, and that's what it is.
Yeah.
Yet you have to literally stand on your head every year to get Congress to approve 150 million. That's the problem. There is no sense of urgency by government of a disease that has persisted for 75 years, whose morbidity factor is terrible, and who, frankly, I'll tell you, I use Dexcom, I think it's a godsend. My A1Cs went from 9 to 6.4. I know people who you say, why don't people do it?
Well, I know,
it costs a
affordability.
lot of
Yep,
money.
Absolutely.
And for a lot of families, it's cost prohibitive. So,
And so
I feel
I'm
lucky to have it.
Anyway,
I'm not sure economics is going to cure diabetes.
I'm sorry, I'm getting
I'm
a
sorry.
signal on time. So we need to keep moving faster.
Research area.
Okay, and then I'll just skip to, so I'm going to have to cut short to what I was going to say. So I am remiss in not pointing out that JDRF pays attention to that reimbursement thing. So we were concerned that CGM was coming to market, but insurers were not covering it. So we actually said to the insurers, what do you need? And they said, we need more data that proves conclusively that this can drive better outcomes. So JDRF actually funded what we call a phase 4 trial. It's already reached market. We spent money to prove what we already knew, that if you were aware of what your blood sugars were all the time, you probably would do a better job of managing it, right? I mean, that's one way of characterizing it. So we spent that money, produced the data, went to the insurers and said, this works. And the good news is they started covering it so that we still have more and more people getting access to it. But if people can't get access to it, we haven't succeeded. So I'm going to have to accelerate here, and there's just a couple of things I want to do.
Thank you.
I completely appreciate the comment. I just can't. I'm obviously going long. So good news is you guys started asking questions, which is what I asked you to do. Encapsulation. So everybody has a slightly different way of characterizing this. I personally like my shark cage analogy because it just always has worked for me. I use the shark cage analogy. The idea behind encapsulation is literally somewhat like a shark cage. You want to be able to take that diver, put him inside the cage, drop him in the ocean, and he's able to take those amazing videos of great white sharks going around him, but they can't get in and eat him, even though he looks like a tasty morsel. right? So we want to do that same thing, but for beta cells. We want to take them, put them inside a shielded capsule that can then create a barrier and protect them from the great white shark of the immune system who wants to come in and destroy them, right? Same kind of concept. This is something that's been worked on for a long time. In order to do it, we have to have an abundant supply of beta cells, and we have to come up with a biomaterial that's able to encapsulate. Some really important work being done in this city over at MIT with a particular researcher on compounds that are biocompatible. But I wanted to show you one in particular that's pretty cool. So there's a quarter for scale. It's about the size of a Band-Aid. It's about as thick as a Band-Aid. It's flexible like a Band-Aid. You can open this up, and you can put several 100,000 cells inside of it, and then you can seal it back up, and you can implant it in a person's love handle. Give it about, and so now we really do have a good reason for love handles. Give it about 6 weeks, and it spins up and it starts releasing insulin. The cells inside differentiate them. The cells being put into this are derived from stem cells. This is work that JDRF began back in 2002. This is a long-haul strategy for us. It's beginning to pay off. This device is called Encaptra. It's with a company called ViaCyte. I think Encaptra sounds like a comic book hero. This device is going to be implanted for the first time in a human being sometime, like maybe right now. Sometime in the next, let's call it 90 days. Could have already happened. Could have happened today. It's going to happen very soon, right? So remember I talked about driving things through that pipeline and translational work? This is a big step from a concept where we knew the idea of a shark cage, but now we're going to actually move it into the actual device, and this has worked in animals. We've taken human cells inside the device, inside of animals, and 6 weeks, 90 days after the animal gets it, they no longer need insulin. They literally walk away from all insulin. The idea behind this, if it works the way we want it to, literally you get one of these or two of these, we'll have to see, whatever it is, implanted, a little outpatient surgery, and a love handle, and 90 days later, no more insulin shots, no more carb counting. We'll have to see how long they last. Maybe they'll go 2 years, maybe they'll go 18 months, maybe they'll go 3 years. We'll have to wait and see. But imagine, remember I talked about improving lives and less type 1 until there is no type 1? So here's something that for years at a time, you wouldn't need to do anything. Be cool. And this is one of those ones that kind of gets my fingertips kind of tingly because, it's pretty extraordinary stuff and it's being tested for the first time in people. It could utterly fail, but that's okay. Jennifer will keep working at this till we figure out a way to make it work, right?
Just a quick technical question.
Well, actually, I had a question behind you. I'll come back to you in a second.
Okay, no problem.
How deep is this implanted? Is it implanted into the subcutaneous tissue?
I will be honest and tell you, while I have hung out with some of the researchers doing this, I have never asked that question. It's not deep. It's really just into the love handle, so it's essentially, I think, sub-Q. It's not a deep implantation. It's certainly not into the peritoneal space. It's just beneath the surface. So I really haven't asked that question. It's a good one I'll have to remember to ask. And then you had a technical question.
Just a technical question. Are they harvesting beta cells from cadavers? Or
No, these are stem cells. These are grown. These are grown from a cell line. And there's a whole story I can tell you that's a really fun story, and I want to tell you the story, but I know that I'm running out of time. So if you are willing to hang out later, I'll tell you some of the extra fun stories that go with the cell line and there's some extra really cool things. Okay, so I just have to tell one. And Kelly just says to shoot. There's a really cool thing that's going to happen here that doesn't always happen in medicine. So getting a yes/no is hard in medical science research, right? Did it work? Well, we see the fact, we don't know how strong it is. It looks like it's this strong. The people that are going to be the first ones to receive this are people who make absolutely zero insulin. Zero. Nothing, right? And we know from the research that JDRF has driven forward that the vast majority, 85% of people, even if they've lived with 70 years with type 1 diabetes, still make a teeny bit of insulin. We're going to find that 15 or 12% that make nothing. We're going to put this device in them. If 90 days later we can measure a C-peptide, there's only one place that could have come from, and it's from the new device. Right? So that's a really cool, there's just lots of cool things to this. There's a lot of reasons to be excited. This is now reaching human beings, but it's still a long ways before this is commercially available. There's still a long ways to go. So again, just wanted to start giving you concrete examples. I think I should probably skip forward. So prevention is another big area of work. We have a whole giant, vast majority of JDRF's research portfolio is dedicated into the immune space and the beta cell biology space. And so part of that is prevention, right? I was talking earlier about having a target on your back, and we want to prevent the best. Ben Franklin, the ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. The best thing is to never get the disease. That means we've conquered the immune system. We've figured out a way to retrain the immune system so it doesn't attack the beta cells. So that's another strategy that we have going on. There's some amazing work going. I'm not going to drill down into it right now just because of time. But again, if you want to stay after, I'm happy to give you more information. Restoration. This is an umbrella concept here, but this is the idea of taking the autoimmune intervention and combining it with other things like the ability to regenerate beta cells. Right? Does the body have the ability to regrow beta cells? And I can tell you that 10 years ago, if I'd been standing up here, the answer would have been an absolute no. That you've lost those beta cells and the body doesn't have this ability. We don't generate new beta cells. That was pretty much considered dogma, right? There were some people who it was debated, but it was pretty much considered dogma. But because of work that JDRF has funded, we now know that the body does have the ability to grow new beta cells. In fact, every time you see a pregnant woman, you're seeing a beautiful model of growing new beta cells because her body's actually sent out a signal that said, you know what, I'm going to need more insulin over the next 9 months, grow a few new beta cells. Right? And the body actually grows those new beta cells, and then after 9 months, she delivers the baby, and she doesn't then have this problem of having too much insulin on board. The body actually reabsorbs those cells. So the body has an elegant mechanism inside of it that can turn on and say, grow more, or grow or have less. My joke with this is now we have to get all the guys pregnant. I'm all about jokes, but that's the field of regeneration. There's an amazing colleague, her name is Pat Killian, and she oversees this work for JDRF. We have a whole consortium of researchers that do this around the globe. The great news is we really cracked that nut. We now understand a number of different metabolic pathways that can be used to cause beta cells to regrow, and now we're looking for drugs that can mimic that, so that we could literally go into your body and turn on that signal and get it to grow or protect and survive the cells that are already there, right? And then at the same time, strategies that are also tied into prevention strategies that can turn off or readjust or create tolerance in the immune system so the body doesn't decide to destroy beta cells anymore. Remember I was talking about this is a global portfolio that's incredibly complex, and I've just tried to summarize a boatload of stuff into some very broad things, which isn't at all fair. But these are all projects that JDRF has going on, all part of what we are doing, all part of what your resources make happen. And I think at that point we're going to, I will, Kelly, I will skip to the video here in just a second. We're not going to take you through this entire slide deck because of time. But I do want to put this up here, because this is another thing that JDRF didn't always used to do, right? And I've often felt this was a problem for us, because we're all working on this year after year after year. We're raising money, and year after year we're driving things, but we don't always have a clear sense of where is this in the big scheme of things. Is this about to reach us soon? Is artificial pancreas technology going to be commercialized next year, this year? What does it look like? And so this is JDRF for the first time, and if you see the materials that you got tonight and the new materials that we have, and you can find this online, you see that JDRF is increasingly trying to do this. We're trying to give you a sense of what we see as being near-term, mid-term, long-term. We're not going to tell you you're going to have this in 5 years. You're going to have this by 2018, right? We're not going to say specific things, but we're going to try to give you a sense of, you know what, this is near-term stuff. This is not at all far away from reaching you. This is a few years yet beyond the near term, and this is yet a few more years beyond the midterm, right? This is dynamic, right? If there's a giant hurricane spinning up, I live in the southeast, so a giant hurricane tracking up, you're pretty much checking back with the National Weather Service on a daily, on an hourly basis to see what the updated forecast is. To see, okay, is it now going to hit Charleston or is it going to hit Wilmington, North Carolina? And the same idea behind this. This is dynamic and it's going to change, so check back with us because we'll give you updates. If we see something fail, like in this world of encapsulation, we see a failure, this may get pushed out further or may drop out into the long term. If we see a big success, maybe we're able to move it up here, right? So this is going to change, but we're trying to give people a good sense of where things are and what their work is making possible. This short-term stuff here, near-term stuff, this complications, diabetic eye disease, and predictive diagnostics, these are things that already exist. We now have a drug on market that JDRF drove forward called Lucentis that can actually reverse diabetic macular edema. So people who've lost eyesight can now get it back. It doesn't just stop progression, it can restore eyesight. That's something JDRF made happen. And again, I'm not going into all the details of it. But if you wonder what your dollars are doing and you're wondering why we're always pushing hard, that's what this is. Artificial pancreas, I was just telling you, low glucose suspend is going to be here in the next couple of weeks. You're going to hear an announcement from a company that's going to tell you that they're bringing their first low glucose suspended pump system to the market. So these things are happening, and we're going to hopefully see lots more of these things happen. And this is only a highlight of the giant portfolio that we're running for. Okay, so let me now, I'll just skip out of this. You can see all these other great things. I want to close with this one video, and I love this video for lots of reasons, partly because when it first came up, there was the company, the group that was working with us said, we're not sure whether this works, but you tell us. And then by the time it ended, there was nobody in the room who could say a word. So I think you'll see why I like this video.
Without your support, a world without type 1 diabetes is only a dream. And it's impossible to think that life will get better for generations to come. Because we know progress is uncertain. It's why we refuse to believe the struggle will eventually fade away. Believing the constant counting, testing, and injecting is beyond our control. Because life-changing discoveries are not our destiny. But your donation can change our destiny. Because life-changing discoveries are not beyond our control. Relieving the constant counting, testing, and injecting, the struggle will eventually fade away. It's why we refuse to believe progress is uncertain, because we know, for generations to come, life will get better. And it's impossible to think that a world without type 1 diabetes is only a dream. Together, we can turn type 1 into type none. Join us now at jdrf.org.
Thank you all for coming. I'm happy to answer more questions. Thank you.
No. We've kept you for a while tonight, and Tom, thank you so much for coming up and doing this. My name is Sean Doherty. I'm on the board here locally. I don't work at JDRF, but this is my life's mission. I think everyone in this room here, I like to think of as every one of us is either 0, 1, or 2 degrees of separation from this disease. You either have the disease, you're a parent, brother or sister, or you're a grandparent, or maybe some of you are so good that you're a baseball coach or something of a kid with type 1 diabetes, you've been touched by it. I'm one of those, no surprise. My son Finn's 13 years old. He was diagnosed in 2002 when the encapsulation study was just starting. How fun is that? And he's a superhero, like all you guys that have a kid with type 1 diabetes. My father was diagnosed in 1967 with type 1 diabetes, commanded a nuclear submarine, eventually died of complications of this disease 2 years ago. Kidney disease got him first, but if it wasn't that, something else would have been right behind. So this is near and dear to my heart, but I know that's true for everyone here. JDRF, I've been involved with since 2003, gives me hope. And I hope it gives all of you guys hope. But you look at this stuff tonight, I mean, we are narrowing in on some real changes. My son's life is going to be different. I hope it gets cured, but it's certainly going to be different. And I think that the mission of JDRF of less until none is critical. We spend 2/3 of our money on trying to cure this disease and prevent it from my daughter Annabelle, from my nieces and nephews, where clearly I have this in the family, and all of you guys clearly do too. And so there's an awful lot of hope around that. But here's the thing, and you know it's coming. We need money to do this. And when you think about encapsulation trials and things like that actually going into humans, this is not cheap stuff, and this is not the time for us to give up on this. And so New England is a hotbed of this. $14.2 million last year came into this area to do research on every single one of the elements that you've seen here today. Last year, New Englanders gave $5.7 million to JDRF, which is a great number. It puts us among the highest in the United States. I'd like us to be a lot higher than that. And let me break that down a little bit for you, because it'll tell you the great power of this organization as a grassroots organization. That $5.7 million, $3.7 million came from 37,000 distinct donors. How amazing is that? $100 donors. And those are the third and fourth and fifth degrees of separations. Those are the walks, those are the baseball coaches, those are the best friends, parents that are throwing in a little bit of money. How do we get those 37,000, and I'm sure some of you are here today, and don't give 100, give 200. Don't give 200, give 250. 65 people, 65 donors, and companies, individuals in all of New England gave more than $5,000, accounting for the other $2 million. I want to figure out a way that we get that 65 people and turn it into 130 people. And if we can do that, and we can make the 2 million into 4 million, and we can turn the 3.7 into 5.7, one of these days, and I'm going to keep working at it until we do it, we're going to be giving as much out of New England as we're bringing back into New England. It's a long way to go, but I think we can do it. And every single person in this room can give. Every single person can, and it doesn't need to be 10 and 20 and 50 and $100,000, although if any of you were able to do that. Kelly's in the back, and she's happy to talk to you. But I would like everyone in the room on your drive home tonight to dig for the lint. Go deep into your pockets and think tonight about what you heard and how we're actually solving this problem. And think that this group of people, because if this group of people in New England doesn't give money, we don't succeed. It's that simple. This isn't a broad-based charity. This is a specific disease charity where if you're not 0, 1, or 2 degrees of separation away from this disease, this isn't going to happen. And so the way that my wife and I think about our charitable giving is that there's this, and then there's a lot of other stuff. And we try to give generously because I think that's what you ought to do. But this is magnitudes above everything else, because if we don't do it, no one does it. And so I'm going to ask you tonight to please think about this on the way home, and we look forward to getting your donation over the next week. Thank you. Thanks a lot.